This is the Grind It Podcast. Just like learning a new trick in skating, life can be difficult at times. Yeah, there may be some bad slams, but there's also times of rejoicing when that trick is finally landed. We're here to help you in your journey with Jesus by studying God's Word verse by verse and sharing personal stories that will encourage you to keep grinding and to not give up. Here's that old school skater himself, Randall Tucker, and his wife, Mary. Welcome to the Grind It Podcast.
Welcome.
It's been a hot minute since we recorded, as you just said before we started rolling this recording. Shelby's got balloons coming out of your head.
Yeah.
So, happy belated Father's Day to all you rad dads.
Rad dads.
I preached a sermon one time that was called Rad Dads.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, when I was at Louisville Christian. Yeah.
For those of you who are in our generation that use the word rad.
Yeah.
Radical.
Johnny Tubular, dude.
I don't think I've ever heard people use that word.
Really?
No.
It's okay. You didn't miss much.
Yeah. So
What are we getting into today?
we're back from not Spain. That was last year. Back from Italy.
Woo! Grazie.
Yeah. And so we are tired and worn out from that trip.
It was wonderful, though.
Yeah.
Highly recommend.
Yeah, and had a good time. Got to tour a little bit of Rome. Fast and Furious. And then went south down the coastline and
Amalfi Coast.
ate a lot of pizza because I didn't like the food.
Lots of pasta, lots of bread, lots of...
Yeah, not a lot of pasta for me, though, because when I tried Miranda's, it just smelled like somebody took a dump and you eat it.
Ew.
Yeah, so the peppery, remember it's too peppery? And I was like, this just smells like poo. So it's like,
Interesting.
yeah, no, so I didn't eat it. I stuffed with pizza.
It's a lot of pizza.
Yeah. It was a lot of mushroom stuff and
Ham, prosciutto.
sausages. So, if you're into that kind of thing,
Did they have Little Debbie's?
no. But they did have a lot of pastries.
Nutella. Lots of Nutella.
Big thing there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're glad to be back, ish, and get back into the everyday world of work.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we had recorded some episodes before we left, and we ended with about the middle part of chapter 9.
Okay, 1 Corinthians,
And we could
chapter
tell
9.
Shelby didn't listen to none of them while we were gone because she thought we were starting chapter 9.
I said, are we in 7 or 8? Where are we? I don't even know. Whoops. Sorry.
All these podcasts start running together.
It's been a couple weeks since we recorded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least 2 or 3.
Yeah. So we're going to finish up chapter 9 today. And next week we'll do chapter 10.
All right.
How about that?
That's how it usually rolls.
All right, you pray and we'll get started.
All right. Father, we thank you for today. Thank you for this time. And you said that a workman approved is not ashamed, but you want us to rightly divide the word of truth. So we ask for wisdom. We ask for revelation, knowledge, understanding. We ask for discernment and a deeper level of intimacy with you. Father, every person that listens and watches, Lord, let them feel your presence. Not only as we discuss, but as we read your word, we want to know you more intimately. So take us deeper. Lord, we ask it all in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.
All right, so in chapter 9, try to refresh just a little bit. Paul's authority has been questioned by the church at Corinth.
Say it ain't so.
That's a song. Say it ain't so.
Okay, sorry.
The 80s. And so he's going to defend himself, right, in this chapter. And then he's going to go into this rant about preachers being paid. So evidently the church, because the church at Corinth, so he goes around to these churches raising money for the church at Jerusalem who's going through hard times because of the drought.
Okay.
And the church at Corinth, this is not in chapter 9, this is later on, it may be in 2 Corinthians, I'm not sure. But the church at Corinth, as rich as they are, we talked about that, right? They're kind of tight with their money.
Okay.
They didn't want to give. And so he, and they're kind of fussing, saying that he's been getting paid to be preaching and whatever, and he's defending himself as an apostle, and he's defending preachers being paid for their labor.
Right.
But he clarifies to the church at Corinth, I don't get paid for preaching. I don't ask for money whenever I go somewhere and preach the gospel. But he does receive gifts, like from the church of Philippi. They send him gifts often. All right, so Shelby, we ended with verses 14 through 18 in the last podcast. So read that again, just as a refresher, and then we will go. We'll go through verse 19, and we'll pick up discussing verses 17 through 19.
Okay. In the same way, the Lord has commanded that those who preach the gospel should receive their living from the gospel. But I have not used any of these rights, and I am not writing this in the hope that you will do such things for me.
So you see how he's clarifying it. I didn't ask any money from y'all to come there and start this church, and I didn't come there, for all this pain y'all put me through. I didn't ask for any money from that. I never used any of these rights. Right? So he's clarifying that he did not take any money to preach.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
For I would rather die than allow anyone to deprive me of this boast. For when I preach the gospel, I cannot boast, since I am compelled to preach. Woe to me if I do not preach the gospel. If I preach voluntarily, I have a reward. If not voluntarily, I am simply discharging the trust committed to me. What?
Stop right there for a second. So I think we talked a little bit about this a few podcasts ago, but he says, look, I'd rather die than lose my right to boast about this New Living Translation, about preaching. I don't want any money.
Without charge.
Yeah, without
Right.
charge. And he says, hey, preaching the good news is not something I can boast about. I'm compelled to do it by God. Mm-hmm. God, and remember we talked about his conversion story, about how he's traveling the road to Damascus to persecute people who follow Jesus.
Right.
And Jesus just pops up on the scene and knocks him to the ground, and he's blinded by the light.
Right.
And so that's how he met Jesus, and that's how he becomes an apostle, one born out of due time, he says himself. And we talked about the qualifications of an apostle a few podcasts ago, and how Paul really doesn't meet those qualifications because he's seen Jesus much later. He wasn't with the originals from the beginning. And you just think about preachers, and I'm not condemning, they're the ones who have to answer for all this stuff, but you think about these, well, and I think you brought it up, but the millions of dollars that they make, and the insane huge houses they have. It looks like a city. It's so big, and it's just like them and their wife or whatever, and they have like a 10,000 square foot house. It costs millions of dollars, and they drive the fancy car. And hey, and that's on them. Great for them. I'm glad they got the money and they could do that. But here's a man who sometimes has nothing, gets beaten, flogged, stoned, pretty much killed, and God, I think God miraculously brought him back to life. Shipwrecked, going through all these very difficult times, and he says, I don't even want any money. You just don't see that very often today. You see it some.
Right.
But it's just it's a rare thing, and he was a Pharisee, so I'm sure at one point he probably had money, because the Pharisees were loaded, and Paul says I just learned to be content with whatever situation I find myself in, and he's
whether in plenty or want.
Yeah, and he's literally just waiting for God to supply his needs, right? And you just don't see this a whole lot with preachers today. And
I don't think people would sign up if you tell them you're going to go through all that.
Yeah,
Sure, sign me up.
for free.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not going to pay you anything, but you're going to,
Get beaten, shipwrecked, and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, and so we also discussed, how much is too much. Where do you draw the line at the pay? at preachers' pay. But I just think that's interesting with Paul's attitude, and he's like, I don't want any money, and I go through all these things, but I'm compelled by God to do this. It's the driving force behind me.
Right. It's what I've been entrusted with to do, and woe to me if I don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Which makes me think about preachers who retire, and then they just kind of just get out of the ministry. Mm-hmm. You don't see that with preachers anywhere in the Bible either. We didn't discuss that at all.
They retire when they pass away to heaven.
Yeah.
They graduate.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So there's that, which we can discuss at some other point. So where were you at? You can pick up where you're at. What?
18.
Okay.
What then is my reward? Just this, that in preaching the gospel I may offer it free of charge, and so not make full use of my rights as a preacher of the gospel.
Read verse 19.
Though I am free and belong to no one, I have made myself a slave to everyone to win as many as possible.
So, the verse 19 is where we're going to pick up discussing, and we're going to talk about, because the word here is bond slaves. I've become a slave to all people. So, one of the things, and this is not my notes, I'm just going off the top of my head here. One of the things, talking about bond slaves, what was one of the things that servants did when you first walk in the door of somebody's home?
Clean their feet.
Probably greeting and washing of feet.
Yeah, what'd you say?
Clean their feet.
Yeah, clean their feet, right? Because they wore the leather sandals. And they did have roads, because we actually walked on the real Roman roads.
Right. In the Roman Forum.
Yeah, in the Roman Forum, and it was really cool. But there were dirt roads as well, and so their feet were very dirty, and so they would have slaves to wash the feet. And what does Jesus do in John 13?
Washes his disciples'
Wraps the
feet.
towel around himself. Yeah.
Yeah, and he washes his disciples' feet, and he says, "Do this, for one another." And you remember what Peter's reaction was when Jesus comes to Peter to wash his feet?
Not mine.
Yeah, he's like,
Not
"What?
mine.
You ain't washing my feet." And what did Jesus say?
If I don't wash your feet, then you won't have any part of me.
Yeah.
Right.
But they said wash everything, right?
And then he's
Then
like,
he
okay,
said,
well,
yeah.
everything then. My head, my hair.
to toe. Who is that? That's not Paul Abdul. Who is that? I don't-
Another 80s one-hit wonder.
Yeah. And so so you think about that in the humility in that, right? Because here's Jesus who came down from heaven, and Paul talks about this in Philippians, where he says he humbled himself and left all that it's in heaven, and he left sitting at the Father's right hand in the place of power, and come down as a man.
Humbled himself.
To be
a servant, right.
And that's what Paul's saying here. He's like, I was in a place of power. I was in a place of authority.
Prestige, right.
Yeah.
Honor.
And he says, I've become a slave to all people to bring many to Christ. And again, Jesus taught, because you remember the disciples would often argue, who's going to be the greatest in your kingdom?
Right.
Right? And James and John, the sons of thunder, even got their mom involved in it.
And
Salome.
And asked, right?
Yeah.
Ask, can my son sit on your right and your left? And
Yeah.
it's quite a bold ask. In your kingdom,
Yeah.
can they sit on the other side of you?
And Jesus says, you don't know what you're asking.
Yeah.
And so he's like, there needs to be some humility here. And if you want, he tells them, if you want to be the greatest in the kingdom, then you got to be least. Mm-hmm. You got to be a servant. And he demonstrated that by washing their feet in John 13, which is why Peter's spazzing out. You're not washing my feet.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Paul's saying. He's like I'm free to do what I want any old time. And he's like, but I've become a slave to all people. But I don't charge anybody. I'm going through all this stuff to preach the gospel, the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus, and taking it to the Gentiles. People are chasing me from city to city. Literally, I'm having to look over my shoulder because my life's being threatened everywhere I go every day. And he says, "Yeah, but I've become a slave to all people to bring many to Christ." So the word here is bond slave, doulos. And just to make it easy, I went to gotquestions.org to see what it said about a bondservant.
Okay.
Here's what it says. A bondservant is a slave. Point blank.
Okay.
Slave.
That clears it up. All right.
But you think of the word slave in our day and time, especially here in America, not a cool word.
Right. That's not something that anybody aspires to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where I was going, what you just said. That's not anything that, we just don't use that term because it brings such a negative connotation.
Servant, people use.
Yeah.
Not so much slave.
All right, so here's what gotquestions.org says. A bondservant is a slave. In some Bibles, the word bondservant is a translation of the Greek word doulos, which means one who is subservient to and entirely at the disposal of his master or slave. Other translations use the word slave or servant, which is what you just used. In Roman times, the bondservant, or the term bondservant or slave, could refer to someone who voluntarily served others. Mm-hmm. But it usually referred to one who was held in a permanent position of servitude. And when we think of the word slave, that's what we think of, right? Under Roman law, a bondservant was considered the owner's personal property, and that's more like what we
Right.
think of when we think of the word slave. Slaves essentially had no rights and could even be killed with impunity by their owners. The Hebrew word for bondservant, ibid, had a similar connotation. However, the Mosaic law allowed an indentured servant to become a bondservant voluntarily. If the servant declares, "I love my master and my wife and children and do not want to go free," then his master must take him before the judges.
Pierce his ear.
Yeah, he shall take him to the door of the doorpost and pierce his ear with an awl. Then he will be his servant for life. It's kind of like a branding. That's Exodus
with
21, 5 and
cows.
6. Yeah. I own you. You're mine. Many prominent men of the Old Testament were referred to as servants. God spoke of Abraham, his servant. Joshua was called the servant of the Lord. David, Isaiah, and even the Messiah is called God's servant in Isaiah 53:11.
The suffering servant.
Yep, suffering servant. In all of these instances, the term servant carries the idea of humble nobility. Being God's servant is an honorable position. During the time of Jesus in the first century church, as much as 1/3 of the Roman population were slaves. Well, we saw the Colosseum and all,
Right.
and everywhere you go, it's just like these ginormous blocks, and a lot of concrete.
Well, right, and lots of marble and lots of just enormous columns, buildings, things that were just gigantic. And you think, I'm not sure that we could put that in place with our technology today, much less how did they
Yeah.
do that without
Any tools or
well, obviously they had tools of some sort.
yeah, just not
But-
what we have.
Right, not the same tools that we have today.
Not the modern stuff.
But some of these arches were multiple stories high, and you got to think, okay, they had to build some kind of scaffold or something. But yes, it did pass through my mind several times while we were walking around looking at these ruins. How much slave labor was involved in building these
Pyramids
colossal?
in Egypt too.
When you walk up
things.
to the Coliseum, it's like walking up to the if you got a college stadium anywhere close to you or an NFL team,
Yeah.
like Neyland Stadium is 20 minutes from the house, right? And it's ginormous when you walk up to it. Well, the Coliseum is that big or bigger. And so
Crazy because they don't look at some of the pictures. I mean, they look tall, but he probably doesn't
yeah,
even
pictures
fathom
don't do it justice.
Yeah.
it. Like,
And so you think about what he says here during the time of Jesus and first century church, as much as 1/3 of the Roman population were slaves. Mm-hmm. So that's probably how all those buildings were built, with these slaves.
Right. Well, and because Rome was conquering all of these people groups, right? Rome was an empire that was spreading fast and conquering all of the indigenous people. So when they conquer, what do? They take them in as slaves. Now you are part of our labor force,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
You're part of our workforce.
Well, because when we left Rome, when we went south to Salerno and into
Agropoli.
Gropoli, and we went up the coast and saw some other little towns, it all looks the same. Mm-hmm. You know, the little cobblestone, is it cobblestone was the name of the streets they had, and then all the buildings tall with the shops underneath. And then when we went to Spain last year, built by Rome,
Right.
look, it's almost exactly the same as Italy.
Very
Right.
similar.
Yeah, very similar.
Pretty cool.
My wonderful wife, Mary, from the Ground Up Podcast, has been a worship leader for over 20 years. She has written and performed many songs that you would absolutely love. To hear her music, check out our website at www.marygamboamusic.com or our website at thegoat.org. That's THEGOTE. Or you can find the links to these websites in the show notes. Now, back to the podcast.
And it's lasted thousands of years.
Yeah, it's insane.
Now they can't even do a road without getting a pothole.
Yeah. But you know what was really, so here's one of the cool things I noticed. So when we were walking in the old Roman Forum outside the Colosseum, I don't think she'd ever, I don't know if you ever saw it or not, but the roads, the real Roman road, you could see where they was pulling the chariots, and the chariot wheels had rubbed ruts in the
stone.
Wow.
It was really cool. So anyway, going back to this, they built all that more than likely with these slaves. Talking about the bondservant, and so another third of the population had been slaves earlier in life, and it was common for freeborn men and women to work side by side with slaves as street sweepers, dock workers, doctors, teachers, and business managers. Convicted criminals became bondservants of the state and usually died working in the mines or the galleys. And you remember one of the things that they talked about a lot, that we heard a lot, was the quarrels, the stone where they would get the rock to
Quarries?
Yeah, the quarries.
Quarries.
Yeah. Historical records reveal that it was not unusual for Jews to own slaves during the New Testament period. And I know this is a big controversial topic because of the slavery that's in America, and the Civil War and all that we had over this, because slavery was a familiar part of the culture. That's key. Slavery was a familiar part of the culture when Jesus was walking around. Jesus, and even before that, Jesus sometimes referred to slaves and owners in his parables, like Matthew 25:14-30 and Luke 12:41-48. Also, Jesus taught that the greatest in God's kingdom would have to become the servant of all. Mark 9:35. Such a concept was unthinkable to a Roman citizen who prided himself in his freedom and would never identify himself as a bondservant. And that makes me think of when Jesus was having a discussion, I think it's in John chapter 8, with some Jews, and he says, "Whom the Son sets free is free indeed." And you remember what the Jews replied?
We're not slaves.
We've never been in bondage to anybody.
Well, I know, and we've talked about that on this podcast before, right? Just how ridiculous. I mean, how many years were you in Egypt?
Yeah.
How long did you last in exile in Babylon?
Yeah. And the Syrians.
Your people have been slaves to lots of people groups over the years.
Yeah, and
yet
they're pretty much slaves under Rome's authority too.
The remnant, right?
Yeah. So Jesus' kingdom is not of this world, John 18:36, and the selfish values of earth are of no consequences in heaven. Mm-hmm. So throughout the New Testament, the word bondservant, this is still the gotquestions.org. Through the New Testament, the word bondservant, slave, or servant is applied metaphorically to someone absolutely devoted to Jesus. Like Paul, Timothy, James, Peter, and Jude all describe themselves as bondservants of Christ. Romans 1:1, Philippians 1:1, James 1:1, 2 Peter 1:1, Jude 1:1.
Oh. 1.
What's the ones?
1.
1. Believers today should still consider themselves bondservants or slaves of Christ. 1 Corinthians 7:22, Ephesians 6:6, 2 Timothy 2:24. But we don't. Do you know anybody that considers himself a bondservant? Have you ever heard anybody
Refer to themselves
as
that
a
way.
slave of Christ? No, not because of the negative connotation that word uses, or in our.
Maybe we should start using that for your sign off when you sign a letter or
A slave of Christ.
What year was
bondservant.
slavery abolished again in the United States? Like
Well, the Civil War, that's
1865,
Lincoln
1865?
signed it,
That's what
was
I'm thinking.
18, yeah, around that. Because Civil War was what, 60 to 64?
Because Martin Luther King was still like fighting for like slavery or the
1900s.
Well, they're
yeah.
still fighting over it to this
Yeah.
day. But yeah, Lincoln, freed the slaves. But what he was talking about was a while ago is how a lot of slaves back then didn't want to leave because they don't know how to. They liked where they were at and they wouldn't know how to survive in society. Some of them in particular.
And some had developed such close, like almost family relationships with the people that they were serving that they were like, no, this is my family.
Yeah.
How often have you said, Jesus' family is my family, right? And yes, you have biological family, but for the day to day, sometimes our Jesus family is as close, if not closer, than biological. And same thing with somebody who is serving in someone else's household,
Yeah.
right? And we'll start using that bondservant,
sign it.
bondservant to Christ.
All right. So he said believers today should still consider themselves bondservants or slaves of Christ. He's our Lord, and our allegiance is due to him alone. As bondservants, we renounce other masters, Matthew 6:24, and give ourselves totally to him, Matthew 16:24. So I said this, and we've already talked about this. The concept of slavery carried such a negative connotation in our Western society, even today, that I don't know anyone who calls themselves a slave of Christ on a day-to-day basis. And going back to, we'll finish up what he says. Being a bondservant of Christ is not drudgery. His burden is light. I always think of Elmo when I hear something like that, because Tanner used to watch Elmo, and he'd have a brick and a feather, and he'd say it's something about light and heavy. And my mind always goes there when I hear this. His burden is light. Matthew 11:30. Also, we have this promise. Now that it comes from Romans 6:22. Now that you have been set free from sin and have become slaves to God, the benefit you reap leads to holiness, and the result is eternal life. It's because you've given your all to Christ.
Yeah.
Which is a part of the problem with the Church of Corinth, and it's a part of the problem you see in churches today. People are just, they straddle the fence. Had one foot in the world, one foot with Jesus. Can't do that. And that's what you see with the Church of Corinth.
Yeah.
Paul's telling you're supposed to be living according the Spirit's supposed to be leading your life, and the way you're living, the flesh is leading your life. You're living in sin. So Paul says that he was a free man, and because he doesn't owe anyone any kind of money, and he can go wherever he wants, and he can do whatever he wants, except one little detail, and that detail is that he is a slave of Christ, and he has to do whatever Christ says, because Christ is his master.
Right.
Which would be while Paul's traveling across Asia Minor or whatever, and he's going to a certain destination, and the Holy Spirit says, "Nope, don't go there. You go here." And Paul's like, "Okay." All right, read verses 20 and 21.
Okay.
Shelby.
To the Jews I became like a Jew to win the Jews. To those under the law I became like one under the law, though I myself am not under the law, so as to win those under the law. To those not having the law I became like one not having the law, though I am not free from God's law, but am under Christ's law, so as to win those not having the law.
So this is interesting to me because he talks about I'm not under the law, but yet he's a Pharisee. He can quote the law like he's just having a conversation with somebody off the top of his
It's always
head
confusing to read.
because he knows it so well as a Pharisee. He studied it. It was his life. He studied under Gamaliel, right?
What does yours say? Like with the
This is, I was just going to say, if I can read this, this is complete Jewish version, starting at verse 19. For although I am a free man, not bound to do anyone's bidding, I have made myself a slave to all in order to win as many people as possible. That is, with Jews. What I did was put myself in the position of a Jew in order to win the Jews. With people in subjection.
Stop right over just for a second. So what when he would first come to a town or a village or a city,
You'd find the synagogue.
he'd find the synagogue, which was full of Jews. That was a captive audience. Okay.
Right. With people in subjection to a legalistic perversion of the Torah, I put myself in the position of someone under such legalism in order to win those under this legalism, even though I myself am not in subjection to a legalistic perversion of the Torah.
All right, stop before you move on. Who is writing this letter with Paul? Do you remember in chapter 1? Starts with an S.
Silas?
Sosthenes.
Sosthenes.
Who
Okay.
was Sosthenes? You remember from Acts
Okay.
18? Sosthenes was the ruler of the
The
synagogue.
synagogue in that area.
He got the crap beat out of him under Gaius in the courtroom. Remember?
Gaius. Right. Okay.
It's been a little bit since we studied that.
Yeah. So if I don't, obviously I wasn't there, but I'm pretty sure this is probably the same Sosthenes who had been teaching the law, who would be under that legalism stuff.
Right. Well, I mean, I think it's just interesting that he says, I myself am not in subjugation to a legalistic perversion of the Torah.
Yeah.
Not just the Torah itself, but a twisted
Legalistic.
version of it.
Which is what the Pharisees did.
Right. Well, and Sadducees as well.
Yeah.
Right?
That word's a lot easier to read than this.
A little bit, but
Yeah.
you just kind of sort through it. So verse 21 says, with those who live outside the framework of Torah, okay, talking about pagans, right? I mean, people who, Gentiles that don't have the law and don't have any concept of it, they're not ruled by any of that. So to those outside,
they're in this church.
right, outside
Jew
the
and
framework
Gentile.
of the Torah, I put myself in the position of someone outside the Torah in order to win those outside the Torah. Although I myself am not outside the framework of God's Torah, but within the framework of Torah as upheld by the Messiah. Right? With the weak, I became weak in order to win the weak. With all kinds of people, I have become all kinds of things, so that in all kinds of circumstances, I might save at least some of them.
Yeah. So we're supposed to break all that down
Yeah,
because it's really good.
nice.
All right.
So I don't know if that helped or made things more confusing, but
Well, we're gonna break it down where it's not confusing
yeah,
for Chevy's sake.
okay. And anybody else who might just be wondering, but I've wondered too.
Got a little brain
reading that passage. I become all things to all people so that I might win
save
some,
some.
right?
But it's not like condoning sin either.
Right.
And it's not doing sin with people.
That's the key.
Right.
It's not like, oh, they're smoking, so I'm going to smoke.
That's the
or
key.
they're doing this, I'm going to do
All right.
this.
So his goal is to win people to Christ and not cross the line
right.
in sin. She's fine. So Paul, the first thing Paul is saying is, I'm surveying the audience. Who's my audience?
Right. And so he Jews, and then Jews who kind of have a twisted version of the Torah, and then people outside the Torah. So I'm going to become like them to some degree so that I can develop a rapport with them enough to win them to Christ.
Yeah. Yep. And so the key is, I know my audience, and I know what I need to do according to who's in the audience without crossing the line.
But it's connecting with people.
Yeah, that's the key. Another key. There's a lot of keys in this.
Yeah.
Right. Becoming all things to all people.
You had to connect.
So that I might win some. Right. If you went to, we were talking about the skate park earlier, right? If you went to the skate park in a 3-piece suit and you were Bible thumping there and telling people they needed to turn or burn, it's not
180,
going to
bro.
win any people to Christ.
Kick turn.
No.
Right? Even though you might be preaching truth, even though you might be declaring the word of God in its entirety, you're not going to win any converts. You're really going to
Most
stir
likely
up
not.
some ire,
Yeah.
right?
Everybody looking at me like, what in the world?
Yeah,
doing
like,
here?
you're kind of out of place here, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, if you went into a boardroom meeting with a bunch of CEOs and CFOs in skater garb, you're not going
They
to
look
get
kinda
their
funny.
attention and their respect.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like neither one of those is bad, but can you become like them to some degree so that you can minister to them?
Right. You got to know a little bit about everything. But now we have Google, so we can study up on it really fast.
Okay.
Well, there's that.
But Paul didn't have that, right?
Yeah.
But Paul was very educated, and we know that he used books outside of the Bible because he would quote their own prophets. When he was speaking to those, like when he would travel around.
Right.
So yeah, you have to know your audience, and know how to either come down to their level or come up to their level. If Paul says, if I'm with Jews, I do Jew stuff, right? If I'm with Gentiles, I do some Gentile stuff without crossing the line into sin. Because if I throw a bunch of Jewish laws and regulations on the Gentiles, they're gonna be like, what?
Well,
It's over
and
there.
we already talked in previous episodes about how Paul and Peter had this, interchange that was rather heated.
Well, Peter even
because-
says Paul's hard to understand.
But because Peter was acting one way when the Jews were around and a different way when they
Temptations.
weren't around. So it almost seems like he's contradicting himself, but I'm sure that's not what he's doing.
Right,
So
no.
go ahead,
Yeah.
dive in.
All right.
I'll quit interrupting.
So here's when Paul says, like, well, with these Jews, the circumcised, I do this Jewish stuff, and then when I'm with Gentiles, I do this Gentile stuff. So here's a question: does that mean that Paul hung out in food? Because you remember what we talked about. Well, you may not remember
The food court?
Yeah, at these temples, there was, they offered meat to idols. There was little like cafe style things at this pagan temples, and then
Food
in the
vendors,
market,
right.
the food vendors would sell the meat that was offered to these pagan gods. So does this mean that Paul hung out in food courts in the pagan temples that we discussed in the last podcast? What do you think?
I don't know.
Doesn't tell us.
It does not tell us. So
There's
I'm going to give you my
possibility.
opinion. I'll give you my opinion. I think it means that Paul hung out at those pagan temples. Because he hung out at the Agora, right? Mm-hmm. The Agora is right there around the pagan temple. They're all we walked there.
We walked by lots of temples, for sure.
They're everywhere. Well, the remains of
It's
them.
so weird
but-
because you don't see those. You don't see temples in America really. You see a couple of mosques here and there. Like you don't have the whole. Oh,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, now we just came around in our pocket.
Oh, true.
And we're constantly doing this.
That is universal,
That's
for
true.
sure.
Yeah. So I think it does mean that Paul hung out with around these temples so he could have conversations with people about Jesus, right? because we know that he hung out at the agora. We know that he hung out at the marketplace, and when he visited these cities, because he went where people were. He didn't avoid the people. He didn't sit in the church building in the synagogue or wherever and wait for people to come in and pray them in. He went to the people. And you brought it up a while ago. There had to be communication. There had to be a discussion, a dialogue, right? And then he would find something in common. Go ahead.
I know you've said it a lot in the podcast. Like people will tell you what their needs are. You just have to listen.
Yeah.
But sometimes people will be open and talk to you about, hey, this is going on, and it gives you like open door.
Yeah. At some point, it don't matter who you're talking to. At some point,
They'll tell you what they need.
Yeah, and you can pick up on that, and you can dive into that and enter Jesus into that conversation through that, or through something that you have in common. All right. So we know he hung out at the agora, the marketplace, and then wherever he visited. The temples are right there around the agora. So would Paul go and sit, if invited, with an unbeliever at a table in the food court and have a conversation about Jesus? I just 100% think that he would. There's no doubt in my mind. Because he says, I obey the law of Christ. So this is Paul saying, I do whatever I can to reach people with the gospel without crossing the line into sin.
Right.
Now, however you want to equate that to today's passage, because this is where you have to weigh it, because he's been talking about eating meat offered to idol, and he says whether you eat, it doesn't matter. Whether you don't eat it, it doesn't matter, because it's nothing. We know it all comes from God. But then you got the weaker believer who thinks it's a sin because you're eating this food that's been offered to a pagan god that doesn't even exist. My wonderful wife, Mary, from the Ground Up Podcast, has been a worship leader for over 20 years. She has written and performed many songs that you would absolutely love. To hear her music, check out our website at www.marygamboamusic.com or our website at thegoat.org. That's THEGOTE. Or you can find the links to these websites in the show notes. Now, back to the podcast. And so you have to be careful with your freedom, that's what he's saying, because you don't want to cause somebody to stumble. So do I go to the beer joint and get that best burger in town, risking the opportunity for somebody, a weaker believer, to see me thinking I'm getting... Right. So there's
Yeah. But you're not like gonna... You shouldn't... if you're in a drink, you can't drink in front of somebody that knows that struggles with alcoholism.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
Or whatever that may be.
Right. If I go to a nightclub to minister to people, I don't want to be doing all the things that they are doing and indicating by my participation in that.
Like, oh, she's a part of this too.
That's okay. Right? We are to stand out and be set apart, right? Sanctified. And so if we are there, then we've really got to be conscious of, and I'm not trying to say be duplicitous, I'm not saying be double-minded or act this way in front of these people and this way in front of these people. Be genuine, be authentic yourself, but at the same time, you don't have to participate in the sin to have an opportunity to minister to them.
Yeah, I could 100% guarantee that if Paul did visit the temple of Aphrodite or one of these gods, for whatever reason, he didn't have sex with a prostitute.
Right.
I can guarantee that. All right. So in verse 22, he says, when I am with those who are weak, I share their weakness, for I want to bring the weak to Christ. All right, so the question I ask is, who are the weak? Because I think a lot of people think weak as in weak, and like sick.
Physically weak?
Physically weak. I don't think that's what Paul's talking about.
Infirmed or, I would say especially new believers.
Yeah.
Brand new converts. People who are just coming out of, in this case, like paganism or polytheism. You know, they're just coming to know Christ. They've just given their lives to Him. Like that would be my guess for
Yeah.
who is the weak.
And I think you're right, because the context here is, he just in the last chapter, or in the last podcast too, we talked about he condemned those with this, where he wasn't condemning them. He was just making kind of like punching a little jab at them about the ones who have super knowledge about this meat.
Gnostics, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, no. He's talking about the Christians who they're having this debate about whether you should eat the meat offered to idols or not. And he's like, you have this super knowledge about it. And so he was kind of poking a little jab at him, and he's saying, you got the weaker Christian who doesn't have your super knowledge, is what he's saying. And I believe that in the context of this, he's talking about the weaker believers, and he's saying, to the weak, those weaker believers, I'm going to be, because you remember he says, hey, if eating the meat is going to cause them, I just won't eat meat anymore.
right.
To me, that's what he's saying.
If that's causing them to stumble,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So the word in the Greek for this is asthenes.
I just Googled it.
Probably just butchered it, but it means weak, infirm, or feeble, as in bodily.
Okay, so it could be
Yeah, so it could. It's made up of two
infirmed,
words.
sick.
Yeah. So the word is made up of a negative particle, which is the A, the alpha, and then sthenoo which means to strengthen or confirm, which in spiritual knowledge and power.
Okay.
In spirit, to confirm in spiritual knowledge and power. And so you take the negative of that. The negative of strengthen is to weaken. So Paul says in verse 22, yes, I try to find common ground with everyone, doing everything I can to save some. I do everything to spread the good news and share its blessings. So remember, the goal is to be able to speak the gospel, the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus to lost people, so that they can have a chance to say yes or no to
Yeah,
to
that
reject
save
the
is
gospel.
a sozo.
Yeah,
Sozo.
And he says, I do whatever I can. I'll get up on this high level, or I'll get down on this low level without crossing the line into sin. Right? I do everything to spread the good news and share its blessings. So, this Shelby brought out earlier, this means you have to talk to people. You got to get out of your comfort zones. And, we brought the statistic up before. I learned it in Bible college, but less than 3%, and this was in 2001 when I graduated Bible college, less than 3% of Christians share their faith or have converted somebody to Jesus. That's terrible.
That was 25 years ago. That's probably like 1% now.
Yeah, it's probably less.
I don't know. But what do they find as Christian too?
Right.
Yeah.
That statistic.
But with email and texting and social media, we don't, and that we communicate that way, but we don't have conversations with people anymore. But you have, if you want to spread the gospel, then you have to get involved in people's lives.
And do it lovingly.
Yeah, you have to have a conversation. You're listening for something that you have in common. When you discover that thing that you have in common, you zero in on that, which makes people, when you start talking about what they enjoy or whatever, then it makes them feel more relaxed, and they'll welcome you kind of as a part of their life, and because you're taking interest in something that they take interest in, instead of just talking about you and what you like, right?
Yeah.
And so, huh?
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
It's just making me think. There's a local forum, I could say which one, online, and there's people that are posting anonymously Bible verses, which is great, but they're using all the verses from Leviticus and all these single line verses.
I've not seen that.
And you read the comments, and people are tearing them up.
Oh yeah.
And they're not even using. I was oh, that's hurts. And I was they're using the verses that are strange. You don't usually use for.
Well, they're doing that to generate this stuff.
Stir up.
Just causing,
stir up
like,
trouble.
more.
That's
Right.
why they're doing it anonymously,
Yeah.
because there's no
So
relationship.
that's not connecting with people.
Especially
Right.
if you're doing it anonymously, it's obviously there's no relationship. There's nothing.
Right.
You have an agenda. It's agenda driven,
Yeah.
and it's not good. And so you meet somebody. You have a hey, what's your story? Remember we talked about that at Tribe last night. What's your story? And people start talking about their life, and you show interest. And then when they see that you care, then you can work Jesus into that conversation. And the question is, are you willing to do that? Are you willing to get out of your comfort zone? Is Jesus, the real question is this, is Jesus that important to you or not?
Mm-hmm.
Are you willing to do some things that you don't like to do? Okay. So I was listening to a marriage podcast last week. Well, actually it was a couple weeks ago before we went to Italy. But when I was writing these notes, it was at that time. It was that week. They were interviewing a couple, and the husband loved basketball. The wife didn't like sports at all. It's not me and you. But the lady realized, if I want to get, and this is what she said, if I want to get to his heart, I need to step into his world. And I need to be willing to put forth some effort. She said, I hate basketball. I don't care anything about basketball, but I'm willing to put forth some effort. So she started going to some games with him when he played. And so she would take a magazine or a book to read while, she didn't watch the game or nothing, but she was there. So that was a good start, right? She was present. And then she started studying the game of basketball, and she started watching his favorite team. I think it was the Lakers. And so she started watching the Lakers and learning the players and learning the game of basketball so she could have some discussions with him, right, about basketball. And so when she started asking questions about the Lakers, it literally blew his mind, right? And so the next thing you know, through her effort, they started growing closer and closer and closer. And she had won his heart even more because she did something. She went outside of her comfort zone, something that she didn't care about, but she loved her husband and wanted to connect more. And so she made some effort, got to learn basketball, and then the next thing you know, they're going to games together, and she loves basketball. So at that point, she said, my husband would do anything for me because their bond that they've grew
Developed,
strong.
yeah.
So this is just a good example, I think, of what we have to do with people, just people in general. Even the people that we don't agree with sometimes, or see eye to eye with, people we can't stand even. Instead of condemning them, we need to have a conversation with them, find common ground, and then share Jesus.
Yeah.
That's what Paul did. That's how they spread the gospel all over the world. And the goal is to win people to Christ. Give them, the only way you can win people to Christ is to share Christ with them. Death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. Do you want to live for Christ or not? Do you want to? And so Paul says, I become a slave.
A bondservant.
A bondservant. He's my master. He directs my path.
Well, and I think all of us, we've got the gift and the ability musically to express the gospel. Or I think music is just a universal language. Even though it's different from one culture to the next, it's one of those, it's a connection point. Even with people who have no desire to serve the Lord or no desire to venture into Christian music or biblical, concepts or anything like that. Musically, it gives you some common ground, right? You can talk about music that you enjoy, things that you've studied, or, oh yeah, I've heard that before. Or, even while we were in Italy, somebody asked for like, hey, can you play this song? I'm like, boo. I don't know.
Well, back up a little bit. Back up a little bit, because I want you to tell the story real quick. You can tell a short version of it. But so we're staying. Was this in Salerno?
Yeah.
And we walk out of our Airbnb, and you turn to the right, and there's a coffee shop on the corner, a cafe, and it had pastries and stuff. And the girls wanted to get these croissants that was shot up with Nutella oozing out of it. And
Terrible.
the guy behind the counter there and stuff, you know, so they kind of created a little bond, I guess, because they would go in there so much to get these things. And as we were leaving, we're sitting outside that coffee shop, and there's a few people there, not very many, and you pull out the guitar and start playing. All right, so you take over from there.
Yeah. So it was Sunday morning. We were doing a few worship songs, and I was totally butchering some of the lyrics, but that's okay. You know. And he's got nothing but a little egg shaker. He's playing the egg shaker.
No, that's Miranda.
Well, I look back at part of the video, and you were playing the egg shaker at one point.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And then we passed it off to somebody else. So we do a little bit of worship stuff, and so the guy behind the counter calls some of his buddies, and some of his buddies come, and then people are pulling up to the place, and they're getting out and hanging out and listening. And some of them are even dancing around while we're doing some music, because we kind of moved from the worship stuff to some
That's when the guy asked you if you knew it was a Bruce Springsteen
kind
song.
Of music or whatever.
So they started singing just regular songs.
Some more secular
I said,
stuff.
hey, play something from the 80s, they will know it. Because everywhere we went in Italy, it was 80s American music.
Yeah. And so we were just doing some fun but clean, you know, nondescript music. But it gave an opportunity. So the guy behind the counter, his name is Paolo, and his brother, Luca, were there. And Luca starts talking to us, and I said, do you know Jesus? Mm-hmm. And he was like, well, no. He was kind of conflicted and was like, I have so many troubles in my life, you know. I said, we all have trouble. And Jesus promises that in this world we will have trouble, but take heart, I've overcome the world. And so Jesus is going to be with us in the middle of the trouble. And he was, you know, a little bit of language barrier, but we were using Translate a little bit. Praise the Lord for Translate apps on the phone. Okay. Yeah, so he was speaking some in English, and he said that his mother had cancer, you know, and so this is the barista's mom too, right? They're brothers. Mm-hmm. And I was like, my mom also has been dealing with cancer. Here's a picture of her. You pray for her. I'm going to pray for your mom. We're going to pray for both of them get healed, you know, and that the Lord would be glorified. And so music was the touch point to begin with. Mm-hmm. But then you go to beyond that, oh, mom's got cancer as a touch point. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it was just really cool how the Lord set up that appointment for us to, and my brother-in-law, who's not a believer, is watching all of this go down, and he is like, y'all didn't see it, but so-and-so was calling their buddy that lives upstairs in this place to come down and check it out. And they were FaceTiming a friend, and this one had mom and somebody else on their phone, and they were like, hey, look, you know, check this out, come down.
Yeah, the crowd, we probably had, what, 10, 15 people before?
I don't know. It was growing.
Yeah, it was growing.
And at some point we had to leave because we had to go catch a train, but it was super cool. And then even in the train stations, we pulled out the guitar a few times, just because we were sitting there waiting for an hour.
Hurry up and wait.
So yeah, I mean, and so with the kids, my niece as well as my stepdaughter and my sister, I was just doing some music that they were all familiar with too and could engage in. And there were people on the next platform or way down our platform that were like, hey, you know, and we weren't doing it necessarily to draw a crowd, but that's the beauty of music and that medium. It does draw attention.
Yeah.
And especially when it's done well.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back.
Well, your sister joined in with
lots
you
of people
too,
that do a lot better than me.
And
But Right,
Yeah.
and when we're all jamming and it's like, oh, okay, that's cool. That's a pretty good representation of that song. Oh, that's a nice harmony or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, it draws
But if you
people's
mess up on
attention.
lyrics, it don't matter because they
Yeah,
can't
it's okay.
understand it. They don't know the language, right?
Yeah. So I wanted you to share that story because it's a perfect example of what
Yeah.
we just talked about. I've become, you know, it's not out of your comfort zone. You like pulling out your guitar and playing in, you know, other countries, even if they don't know English or speak English.
Right.
But they still understood. They appreciated it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
The next place I was playing. I think I was just by myself doing a little bit of worship on the terrace in Agropoli, and I was just strumming my guitar, and there was a garbage man that was picking up garbage down a couple of floors, you know, and he is like looking up, going like, "Where's the music coming from?" And I was like, "Hi."
Aw.
You know, so
you get
yeah, it totally brings.
Did you get to connect
Draws
with
attention.
the Luca guy after?
Yeah, we chatted
We gave
a
them the
little
goat
bit,
cards.
but-
We
okay.
gave several people the goat cards so they could scan it and check out the website because they're on the goat website. All her music stuff's on there and the
Yeah.
podcast stuff's on there, so they can contact us through it too. So
Yeah. So we'll see. But and we may never interact with them again. But Lord, if it's
seed.
seeds planted, if it's seeds that are watered, and that person comes to Christ, then glory.
and see that's what that gets back into our text because that's exactly what Paul said. We plant and we water.
Right. We've become all things to all people to win some.
Yeah.
Right.
Even in Italy.
Do we need to go to the last couple of verses or?
Well, 24 is what we're going to jump into now.
Okay.
Thank you for listening to the Grind It Podcast. We want to encourage you to share Jesus with someone today and share this podcast with a friend, a coworker, and your family. And we also want to know how we can encourage you to keep grinding and to not give up. So in order to do that, just email us your prayer request at thegrinditpodcast@gmail.com or contact us on our website at www.thegoat, that's THEGOTE.org, or you can just look in the show notes and click the link. Have a blessed day, our friend.